Hey, this is Leif Ganford. I played the cash register thief in The Amazing Spider-Man, and you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast.
Hey, this is Rich McDonald, and I play Commander David Mason on Call of Duty Black Ops 2. You're listening to Everything Geek podcast.
Hello, I'm Simon Fisherbecker. You probably know me better as Dorian Moldovar from Doctor Who, or the Fat Friar from Harry Potter. And this is Everything Geek Podcast.
Your attention, masters, mistresses. All systems functional for the Everything Geek Podcast.
Hey, it's James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Master Plo Koon in Star Wars The Clone Wars, and you're listening to Everything Geek, the podcast.
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot with the Everything Geek podcast.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Everything Geek podcast. I'm your host Ruari, and joining me is co-host Mairin.
Hi everyone.
And also joining us today is a very special guest. We have production designer Patrick Tatopoulos, who was the production designer on Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, 300 Rise of an Empire, Total Recall, Die Hard 4.0, Underworld Evolution, Independence Day, and Battlefield Earth, creature designer on Silent Hill, Silent Hill Revelation 3D, Resident Evil Extinction, Beauty and the Beast, Spawn, and Riddick, visual consultant on AVP, Alien vs. Predator, and Resident Evil Extinction, costume designer on Stargate and Battlefield Earth, and director of Underworld, Rise of the Lycans. He has already been hired to work on another DC Comics film as its production designer, which is the Justice League Part 1, another highly anticipated DC Comics film. Patrick, how are you?
Fantastic. Nice talking to you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you join us today on the podcast. I mean, you've got quite a list of credits to your name.
Oh, you've missed a couple too, which that's actually the one I'm the most proud of. It's funny. There's a couple of...
Which one is that?
Called Dark City that I did years ago. Certainly not the biggest film of the movie I've done. Smaller, but that was for Alex Proyas, which I'm really, really proud of. And I also was very proud on the creature end of Godzilla and Pitch Black as well. So, yeah, those are like the movie that really made a bit of a difference for me. They're not always the biggest one, but they're often the one I really click on and I'm the most happy with.
Yeah, and that's obviously very important as well, is the films that you're very happy with. In fact, I remember all of the films you mentioned I did have in my original intro, and then I slightly combed it down, just so I didn't lose my voice. Yeah, I've been shown up for that here. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you join us today, sir.
It's a real pleasure for me too.
So, getting right into my questions for you, Patrick, my first question is, how did you decide you wanted to become a production designer?
It's just to try and briefly say, I obviously you can hear my accent's pretty thick, and I'm clearly coming from the French country. I came to America many years ago, and my thing was to build and design and build creatures. That was my first thing. And I came to America for that kind of purpose. And after a few years, I ended up building my own shop, creating my own shop, and do creature effects on Independence Day, I did some designs for Bram Stoker Dracula, but quickly realized that I wanted to do a little more than that, and I was interested in sets as well, or basically what you call the rest of the film, the look of the movie. And, I started as a concept artist. I always drew. I did art school in France, Art Décoratif of Paris, and I always drew, and that was basically my platform to become a designer, which means when I was talking to a director or producer, I would draw something quickly. They liked it, and they gave me more chance. So basically, the biggest tool that I could say I had to become a designer was to draw and to be able to illustrate and create visual elements.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and definitely I can really hear in the way you described it how visuals and all of that appealed to you. That and this especially is, I imagine one of the appeals of working with Zack Snyder, which we'll get to soon, because of course he is really good with visuals.
It is the thing, and I think Zack Snyder is a very visual director. So is Alex Proyas. Again, we did The Crow, we did iRobot, which I did with him as well. Those people are extremely visual. They're fun to work with. It is obvious if you work with a director that's very much only and very much focused on the story, you come to the table and you have more often some sort of a carte blanche on designing the film. Some directors are just sitting down and trusting you on this aspect of things. They give you their sense of what they want, and they're really concentrating on the storytelling, which is obvious. This is what a director should be doing. But when you work with people like Zach or Alex, or Zach for that matter, they're very visual, but at the same time, there's almost like some sort of like an understanding when you work with them and they know what you bring to the table. There's always a real sense of freedom of coming up with ideas. And the biggest job of a designer for me is to basically the biggest quality of a designer is to be able to sit down with a director, spend 10 minutes with that director, understand what they're interested in, understand what they're trying to see, what they want to create the story or to fit their story into. And I think the faster you are at understanding their vision, their work, because you should never forget that the designer designed the film, but ultimately the movie is the movie of a director. It's not the movie of a designer. So your job is to really understand what the director wants, step in and quickly narrow down and bring options and directions for things. And of course, when you draw, when you're able to illustrate, you can do those things in very simple little meaning. You get a pad, you start sketching, come up with ideas, and then you go back home or the studio and you start painting those images so they become more developed and more realistic. But the concept of being able to sit down and understand the director is very, very important to me. That's the single most important thing.
Yeah, that's a really great description of a production design as well, so thank you for that. And I'm sure if some of our listeners are unfamiliar with the production designer role, they'll have a much greater understanding because of what you said, so thank you for that.
Well, listen.
So moving on
to people go watch movies like I used to. You go watch movie, you don't know what a designer is. You know the stars. You sometimes do the name of the director when they be because there's a lot of star directors out there. The designer is not something people think about. When people ask the question, say, so what does a designer do? Well, I'll say the designer is the guy who comes very early stages of the film. The script is ready. The director is on board. He's been assigned to do the film. The first guy that comes really very often is the designer. Because now the director is trying to put things together, trying to understand what the movie could be looking like. Then the director of photography comes in, and a bunch of other people are going to start and come together and create. But the first thing for a director to introduce a team to what his vision is to have someone working with him on putting that vision together. Once the vision is on the table as images, as concept art, the director of photography, the makeup artist, anybody who works on the project can start understanding what the director is looking for. So this is a very interesting job because you start super early on the process and you basically globally try to give a look to the film.
Yeah, it's a really interesting description. Moving on to my second question, how were you originally hired to work on Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice? Were you a fan of comic books growing up?
Not particularly, to tell you the truth. I always loved Batman. Fortunately, that's the guy that always made a difference to me. And probably for the reason that Batman comes up with a bunch of great. Batman has its world around him. It's Bruce Wayne is a man, and when he becomes Batman, there's a whole visual direction, visual asset that he's living within. And there's a world to create for him. And I always love that aspect of the thing. I love the darkness. I like the fact that he acts at night. I like this kind of silhouette on this has always been a fascinating character for me. But I was not per se a real fan of all the superheroes. Back in Europe, superheroes were big, like they are everywhere in the world, but there was tons of other comic books that were, obviously very much less known in the world, but things that influenced me more directly as a kid than necessarily Superman and things like that. Batman, absolutely. So the job to step on the project was very simple. I designed the last 300 movie, 300 Rise of an Empire, which Zack Snyder produced. For the little story, though, when I heard the director was doing the first 300 in Hollywood, I just run and tried to get the job. And I didn't get the job because, I'm as Greek as French, so the Greek thing is very important for me. When I heard someone was doing 300 and knowing the concept, I just rushed and I just met him. And I guess I was so excited, so pumped, and so crazy that I almost scared Zach. And Zach said, whoa, this guy is too out there. I'm not going to... I didn't get the job, bottom line. And then things went on, and I ended up doing I Am Legend that same year. And then years later, he calls me for 300. I was like a little surprised. He says, you know what, Zach loves your work. Now I really would love you to work on that. So I work on 300. The work came out satisfying for Zach. I assume he liked the look of the film. And he reached out to me at the end of the film and said, hey, I'd like to see you. I want to talk to you about something. We're going to do a Batman versus Superman film. He said, and my first question to him was like, is this Man of Steel, the last movie that he had done, against Dark Knight? And he said, no. My question was because I didn't want to step onto a project that already had two characters very much established. Like the Dark Knight was designed, the Tumbler was designed, and Man of Steel was designed. But when he told me, no, we're creating our own Batman, it's a new Batman with a new Batmobile, with a new Batcave, that became really, really exciting for me. So I got the job like this, and I jumped on the project and jumped on it fully when I understood that I had a chance to create the new Batman world.
That's really interesting, the way that you were hired for Batman versus Superman because you had already worked with Snyder before. It's really interesting. And knowing that he could trust you like that as well to work on, Batman versus Superman as well, having seen what you could do before. It's really interesting.
I think directors are like an orchestra director. They look at what's going on the market out there. And, I understood later that, obviously Zach has been following up what I was doing for a while. You don't just jump on someone because he did one film. But, it's like everybody. It's the same thing for me. When I work with art director, I work with concept artists. I watch people's work for a while, and then one day I connect with them and I say, hey, I've seen your work for a while, and I really like it. I'd like you to come and step on board. The funny little question with Zach, though, is just to give you a quick glimpse of that, because I think it's an important part of the movie, is when I met him that day, we spent only 15, 20 minutes together. And I said, so how is your Batman, Zach? And he said, my Batman is a stronger guy. He's very bold. He's very hard, and he's massive. He's not just only this elegant kind of man called Bruce Wayne. When he's Batman, he's huge, he's powerful, he's rugged. All those things were very important to me, because what I did is I left him 15 minutes later and went to a coffee shop, and I did my first design for the film, and the first design had to be the Batmobile. So I went into the coffee shop, designed the Batmobile, did a sketch of the Batmobile, my very first sketch, which was the only sketch I did of the Batmobile. It took me about half an hour. I drew it clearly. I was so pumped about it that I knew what I wanted to give him and show him. Went back to the studio, showed him the design that same day. He loved it, and the Batmobile was created then. There was not like a huge development phase. It was just from one sketch we decided that's the car. So for me, I knew when I designed the car that now the world of Batman became clear for me. It became clear for Zach. We knew what the technology, what the world was around him.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And that actually ties in very well to my next question, which was actually going to be, I know that you co-designed the Batmobile for Batman vs Superman. What, if anything, were your inspirations in coming up with this design, which you kind of touched upon there?
Well, listen, the Batmobile, to tell you the truth, was not a co-design. I designed the Batmobile, but what I did is I worked with an incredibly important person called Dennis McCarthy, who built the car for me. So this is how you work. You don't really do too much co-design. Co-designs are very dangerous because you have 2 people or 3 people working on the same design, and very often those designs become patchwork. They don't become. I think to me it is important that it starts from one source. So the design, I did the design of the car, and then I worked with a team. Few people like Kevin Ishioka, Ed Natividad, a few of those guys worked on board with me. But the design was achieved. What we needed to find is someone that was going to be here to build the car. And Dennis McCarthy works in Hollywood, and he's a car racer. He races off-road cars, and so we met, and I thought he was the perfect guy to build the car. So basically, as a team, on board of the team, you had like 4 guys helping me for the final realization and the drafting of the car, and Dennis built the car with the team at his shop. All started from that original design. And it is a teamwork at the end of the day, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting story. And moving on to my 4th question, production designers are important in selecting the setting and visual style to tell a story, working directly with the director and producer, which you were talking about yourself earlier. Can you remember any challenges you faced in selecting a setting and visual style on any particular project you've worked on? Any big challenges you faced?
Every movie brings its own challenge. Because we're talking mostly about Batman, Superman, I will tell you one challenge that I had is when I designed the Batcave, I felt that basically Batman would never need railing on the staircase. He's a guy that can jump and go crazy. I thought the railing would look weird in his place. However, the studio came back to me and said, well, we can't have, a Batcave that's 40 feet in the air with staircase with no railing. It's completely crazy. We need to have railing. So there was a bit of a debate that sort of went on about, and the 2 options I had is to either build railing, which I thought would kill the design of the Batcave, and didn't work with the car. So I went to Zach and I said, Zach, listen, I don't think we should have railing on this thing. Batman should not be using railing on the staircase. The guy is too cool for that. He agreed with me. So what we did, we ended up building some green railing for protection when the crew would walk up and down the stairs just to set up the shot. When the shot was going to go, then we would remove the railing. Those are challenges that happen at the last minute. The studio come in and feel like this could be really dangerous for everybody. You don't want anybody to get killed. Those kind of challenges happen visually at the level of... The challenge you have is sometimes the other way around. You build, for example, a big set with tons of options for a director to play with, many things, and you give options, and you end up looking at a movie, and the set is barely in a film. Those are the things that you learn to live with, because the movie is not about your set. It's not about your design. The movie is about the story. But sometimes it's tough because you develop a set to the core with many, many aspects of, ideas to be shot in a certain way to give the director all those options, and sometimes it doesn't appear that way, or the set doesn't make it to the end of the film. You don't see it in a movie. Those are my challenge, and I don't remember having major challenge on building anything, on designing anything. It's been a smooth ride, I'd say. It's been good.
That's good. That's really reassuring to hear, for a lot of potential production designers.
A tiny bit better question. It also works with the team you work with. One of the other important things in any job, I'm sure in yours, on anybody's job, is what's the team supporting you, working with you. You have to be very careful who you choose to work with. My first politic is I like to work with the same people I've worked for years because they know me, I know them, and we work well together. And the more you know your team, the more your team knows you. And I'm not saying you never hire new people, you do, but very slowly, the more you work with a team that knows you, the better your work is and the smoother the work gets. And that's super important. It's creating a team that's strong, that knows how to act fast, change things with you, and then you get through a fairly decent job, it's fun.
That's really great advice. Thank you for that. So, moving on to my next question, you've already been hired to work on another highly anticipated DC Comics film, the Justice League Part 1. I know that you can't talk about it much, obviously, But how far along is the crew in pre-production, and when do you think shooting will begin, if you know?
Of course I do. You better know, because when you have to build sets, you better know when they're going to start moving in to shoot. You know, it's really important. The thing is, we can't really talk about the starting date, but let me tell you as a global idea, you know, you ended starting film, a side film at the Justice League at the end of last year. I gave myself almost a year and worked on Independence Day, the new one, on the creatures for a little bit. Did a few things. I tried to chill out a little bit because you always end up working abroad or far from home, and sometimes you need to kind of get back home and recover and basically recharge your batteries. So at that point, we knew we were going to start doing location scout around the end of last year. We did that. And now we're in full-blown pre-production, which is the time where you build the sets. Can't give you an exact starting date, but you know we're getting really close, and it's a humongous amount of work. If you know the comic book Justice League, there's so much to do. So it's been crazy busy, and it's moving fast. Yes.
Well, that's great to hear, and we're looking forward to seeing the Justice League Parts 1 and 2, and your work on Part 1, of course, as well.
Well, thank you.
So you're very welcome. My final question for you, Patrick, is: do you have any upcoming production roles or any other upcoming projects that you would like to talk about?
Well, I can say, you know, in this business, you often do a job, you grow into this job, you position yourself into the industry, and then you're also very interested in doing all the things. I'm the kind of guy, when you're starting to read my credit, you read costume design, you read creature design, you read production design, you read a bunch of things. I've also directed, and I've got offered new movies to direct now as we speak, which are obviously not going to interfere with this movie, but there's a lot going on that end of things, which are becoming really interesting projects, things I really want to be a part of. So without making a specific answer to that, I just want to say the directing is also something that's coming to my door now, and I'm really excited about. So that's probably could be the next step, or one step in the direction that I'm actually really fascinated and interested about. And it's nice to feel like you're growing all the time, and you don't do the same thing all the time. It's important to renew yourself, to think ahead and do new things. For me, it's super important.
Definitely, I completely agree, and I hope that we hear you've been directing some more films very soon. You know, it would definitely be great to see your directing CV, you know, shoot up, because you have directed a few films, as you've said, but it'd be great to see you direct some more for sure.
You know, directing is a great job. But what's important at the end of the day, it's not about directing to me. What's important is work on great projects. You know, sometimes you get offered directing on a film that you don't want to direct because it's not the kind of thing you can do anything interesting with, or it doesn't get you or doesn't capture you. You don't want to do this. And sometimes there's a production design that just comes and you're like, I have to do this. So to me, ultimately, maybe not everybody thinks the same way. It's always been about the project and not so much about who I am and what I'm doing in that project. Some project I'm dying to direct. Some project I'd love to design. So I'm not locked into anything. To me, at the end of the day, is having a bulk of work, a body of work that you're proud of. And, you know, you're never proud of everything, but hopefully the most part of it, you're proud, and you want to keep going in that route and keep doing great things.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really great way to look at it. So that's all of my questions for you, Patrick. I'll let my co-host Maureen ask hers now.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
So jumping straight into my questions, my first question for you is, when you were starting out in production design, were you always kind of leaning towards like the sci-fi superhero kind of genre?
I was. I mean, sci-fi, superhero, I would call it also. Superhero, not so much. Sci-fi, fantasy, or... You know, I looked into this world. I did a bit of comic book art. I was doing graphic novels in France for a little bit. I always loved that world. I always think that takes you away from your daily life. I think there was very much of a kid's approach to things. You want to do things that you don't see every day. And I kept on going that way. So my style and my affinities were more toward that kind of thing. And people see that quickly. They realize that you're good at this. And you end up getting more and more work in that direction. Doesn't mean that I don't want to do anything else. Like when I did Die Hard, that was a very much straightforward film. I find more fun on creating world from scratch. You get a chance to create a new world, a new alien species, a new planet, and that's to me that's the most fun part.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. I mean, there's some kind of special power almost in being able to create this, and it must feel amazing when you see the final product on screen. And if people kind of immerse themselves into that world that you created, I imagine it's a great feeling.
Oh, it is, and actually that doesn't take anything away from designers that design movies that happen like today in New York or something like that. Because design is such an interesting job. I mean, there is a lot of subtlety and very soft and interesting touch on the movie that happens today. You're going to concentrate on the mood of the room to make sure the character is developed and around that concept that you understand who that character is through the design of that place. And it could be just a regular room, but there's a few things that are going to be in this room that are going to create that character and help create that character. I believe in the world of sci-fi is the same. What we've got above and beyond that is we start from scratch, and that's very, very fun.
I'd say so, and it's exactly as you said it. Like, it's the subtle things in film that will kind of always help an audience get a better kind of feel for the character and their motivations. And I think production design is one of the most, if not the most important way of doing that.
I agree with you. I mean, the movies have many tools to tell the story or to define the character. Production design is definitely one. You know, when you walk into the room someone lives in, even if that person is not there, you understand. You clearly get an understanding of who that person is. And with little detail, like you're saying, you actually, by an object sitting next to the bed, medicine sitting next to the bed, you start defining that character before the character even walks in the room. So this is where it gets really exciting. That stuff happens in sci-fi, fantasy movie as much as it happens in regular movies. But in both cases, there is places to play with the design.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's exactly as you said it. So my second question for you is, has the rise of kind of CGI and special effects like matte painting and stuff like that over practical events and everything, has that affected your work as a production designer? Especially when it comes to things like creature design and vehicles and things like that?
Do you know what? It hasn't. Because at the end of the day, look at the job of production designer, someone that creates world, in my case, I like to do creature effect. Whatever the tool is given to you to create those objects, to actually achieve and build those objects is irrelevant. What I think is really important to me, designers have always had open mind. I mean, we used to think the production designer was a guy who design sets and build sets. It is not this way, and it hasn't been this way for a very long time. Yes, we do create sets that are going to be built where actors are walking into big sets, sometimes huge sets or small sets. But we also, the job of designer is to not limit himself or herself to what's going to be built. We design CGI world. The CGI world, the creation of the visual effects starts with the design, starting from the art department, from the designer and his team. So even if you look at a sequence that happens, in a world underwater, some crazy underwater world, and nothing is built, it's all like CGI. It's still the design job. And to me, what CGI has done to us is has allowed us to go beyond where we used to go. However, now this is a very personal answer, is I'm a huge fan of practical. I think we have a tendency to go a little bit beyond where we should often in movies, and the CGI becomes very cartoony. And now when you have animation movies like, all the Pixar work or the Disney work today, which those animation are taking so much, are becoming so realistic, so beautiful. It's hard to find the line between feature film and animation. And to me, it is important, whatever the tool you use, that tool is used to create the most realistic and get you to places where you can create the most believable environment. Doesn't matter what the technology is. And what becomes a more important tool for the designer now is to be able to understand how the visual effects work, how the CGI works. I'm going to give you a quick example. In iRobot, we designed this huge tower, and we ended up building only a floor of that tower and the lobby of that tower. Well, we had to design the entire building for the CGI, for the visual effect people to be able to create the building from scratch. So it is interesting to start with a real building. To design a room in that building, you need to know what the building looks like. And that's how it works. And that room may be the only thing you build. So For me, it's a great tool. It gets you to bigger places. In the creature world, it's the same thing. You have more opportunity. Don't abuse it. Make sure it becomes that kind of thing that turns into a cartoon. And it's sometimes very much on the edge of that. We have to be careful about it.
Yeah, it's a really great answer. You see, I know a lot of people I talk to, and especially in college as well, they're always kind of teaching us to be a bit wary of what CGI can do. And exactly for that reason is that a lot of the time, if it's not done correctly, if you don't have the right team behind it, that it'll just completely fall apart and just not look as good as it could.
Absolutely. The big advantage of visual effects now is that very often is the time you spend on a set. Director doesn't have to worry as much about what the end of the day will look like. He's going to shoot a set. He knows that those 2 walls are going to be done in CGI. He gives a chance to the production, which is a very expensive aspect of filming, to be shorter, more efficient, because you can do a lot more when you go back home at the studio and work on the post-production. And that's a very appealing tool for a lot of directors. It gives them a chance to look back or rethink later. And all those things make the CGI a very important tool. Now, we should also say that there is things that are done in CGI that clearly we could not build. You know very well, all those worlds that you see on screen with incredible cities could not be built, not even as a miniature, or could be attempted, but those worlds are so huge now. It opens up so many opportunities. I just think let's use it when there's a reason for it, and when we know we cannot do it practically. I think that's where the CGI should start.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, I've even found now that it's so accessible by anybody that even we could use it in some of our student productions, where years and years ago, the idea of doing a sci-fi as a student film was just unheard of. And now we are going out and we're shooting sci-fi. We shot a fantasy before Christmas as well, because we just have the tools to do it now. So it's great, but at the same... Sorry, go ahead.
That's absolutely right. And this is great. This is where things are great. Because now a person at home, a girl like working on their own little movie can actually create so much in-house alone and start presenting visions that you could never do before. I think that aspect of things is phenomenal. I mean, there is definitely the studios today are looking at what's on YouTube. They're looking at what's out there at that level, because the creativity, the vision is already clear on the student movie, and there's a great appeal into looking into this world. I think for that purpose, it's phenomenal. It allows people to do for very decent budget incredible effects today. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So my final question for you, Patrick, is what's your favorite film from a production point of view? Like a film that you looked at and thought, my God, the production design is fantastic. It's spot on. Was there ever a film that really just struck you like that?
There are a lot of films. I'm going to surprise you, actually. Films that really got me to think visual are very small movies sometimes. I mean, yes, I watched the Star Wars. That was those movies that really got me inspired about what you can do in filmmaking. But the production design, again, for me, is not necessarily the kind of stuff I do today, sci-fi or fantasy. I love movies that look good. Like there's an old movie that I watched years ago and I watched again. It's a Roman Polanski movie called The Tenant, which I thought looked absolutely stunning. I love another movie from Polanski called The Fearless Vampire Killers. Those movies are from the 70s, I assume, something like that. They're old, but the look, the texture, the vibe of them are phenomenal. I love those films. They really have captured an incredible texture and richness. I'm just saying by that, there's tons of movies today that come out, or maybe the last 10 years, that I love, that I think look beautiful. But I just want to say that it doesn't have to be today to get some great production value and production designs. My favorite thing is the one that were done in a very practical kind of way, done years ago with an amazing DP, director of photography, with a beautiful image, beautiful set, beautiful textures, incredible mood. And those are the movies, I gotta say, I go back to those because those as a kid, when I was a kid, those are the movies I watched first, and they really, really got me. I love even black and white films like the Murnau Nosferatu or Faust. Movies like that, which visually are stunning to me. We don't do this anymore. Today, it is harder to find something that, there's tons of stuff that's great, that's fun, that's exciting, that's beautiful. But I'm still fascinated with the classic work. And today, when I design, those are still the movies that really impact me. And I think I look and I'm talking to directors like Zach or other directors, actual today's director. There is definitely a humongous interest in those classics that were done well, that were creating incredible textures and look without the tools we have today.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Polanski there, and I think the only film I have seen of his is his version of Macbeth. And it's just as funny because the newest version of Macbeth is a film I look to now and go, my God, that's the kind of film I want to make. So I think it is funny that we do have that one film that it just, something about it gets to us, and it's good as well. Yeah, so that
it gets you when you're younger. It gets you when you start. When you start, those are the impacts you have. When you get older and you work on those films for years and you start understanding the technology, movies of today don't get me the same way because they're not. It was a pivotal point in my life when I was younger, when I maybe 18, 20 years old. I just looked at those films, which were already classics at the time, but I looked at them and I was like, wow. And those are what shaped me up. What shaped me up is not a movie that came out yesterday. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is what you're saying regarding the new Macbeth. They're films that really will get you at the origin of your work when you start, when you begin, or maybe prior to that. And that's what's going to shape you up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I couldn't agree more because I even find it now because I'm at that age that there is films that do strike me like that wouldn't have done so maybe even last year when I was only starting out, but has now that I have a bit more kind of knowledge as to what exactly goes into making a film that big, and it's given me this kind of appreciation for just the sheer amount of work that goes into it. And I'm guessing Batman versus Superman must have been just such a huge project, and I can't even fathom beginning to try and do anything with it. I mean, it must have been fantastic experience.
It's a process. You start smaller, you get to this level, but trust me, at the end of the day, those gigantic movies, yes, they're a huge undertaking. You have to have your head floating in many, many directions at the same time, and you learn to do this. You know, so it's a process. I would not, my first production design was Independence Day. It was not a small film. It was a big movie at the time. And I got projected to design it. It was huge. And you don't always control everything. You're surrounded by a good team. I had some great people working with me, allowed me to get to the right place with this. But the more you grow, the more you work, the more you know how to work with your team, those big giant machines like this Batman, Superman, they're controllable. You get a sense on how to work. It's just, obviously, it is a bit of an expertise thing. You don't want to start with that if you can avoid it. You want to start smaller. Another reason for that is when you start smaller, you learn more, I think, because it's more controllable. When it gets that big, it's just, you need to be ready for it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more because I've only been a production designer in college myself once, but then they gave me a Dragon's Lair to design and I was completely out of my depth. I didn't know where to start with it. And I just, because we had no budget, nothing to work with, and it was just terrifying, but it's definitely an area of film. In the end, we just ended up finding a load of gold jewelry from all the different houses and throwing them, because it was a very small set. It was in like a bedroom and it was only going to be used for 2 or 3 shots. But then we got chocolate coins and took the gold wrappers off them and covered the bed with them and put all the jewelry on top of it. So
that's it. And you know, if you were to keep on doing this kind of job, and if you are keeping on doing the production design, whatever you want to do in the future, I don't know, those kind of moments are going to define some of the ideas you'll have in a few years from now. I think this is what I like. I like when people, you know, you're thrown in a corner with no money and you have to create a beautiful design. I think it's doable. And it's not about how much money you have. And of course, when you start building giant sets like the Batcave in Batman Superman, you can't do this without any money. But when you do a small set, like you're saying, I think it's just about the ideas. What you have to think out of the box. We're so expecting what a dragon cave should look like that we always repeat ourselves. Maybe that dragon cave is made of things you've never seen before. I mean, there's so many things. It's simple. And you do this on those small movies because you don't have the resource. You come up with things that are crazy interesting, and you go beyond what you're expecting, because you know mistakes are getting you in great places too. And I think or the lack of money also helps you think differently. I love that.
Thank you. So thank you all very much for answering all my questions, and I'm gonna hand you back over to Ruari now, but it's been a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Take care.
So that's all of our questions for you today, Patrick. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the podcast.
Same thing here. It was great fun. You guys had great questions. It was exciting and fun. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Yep, same to you, and hopefully we can talk to you again at some
Yeah,
point.
let's do it on each movie. Let's do it on the next one. It's a little far away, but you're gonna have to be patient. But it's coming. Those things take a couple of years to make, so maybe we'll chat back then. All right?
Yeah, maybe that would be great. So, thank you again for joining us. Take care. Bye.
Ciao, bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was. Yeah. I'm just going to make a very bold statement right now. We could not have asked for a better first production designer or Batman vs Superman guest. A bold statement to make, but we can agree on that.
I've actually learned so much in the half hour we've been speaking to him that I have anywhere, and like I'm actually set to be a production designer on another shoot in 2 weeks, and now I'm like, yep, I can do this. Bring it on, like. That was fantastic. That was probably one of the nicest interviews I've had, because I don't know, maybe I've been able to contribute more to it having a lot of knowledge of it, but it was a great interview.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, he really was very great. Very insightful and lots of great advice as well. To give us and to give you in particular, considering you've had some experience of this before. Me, I just interview people. That it doesn't sound exciting, but some people might think it is.
It's an exciting career path.
Just joking. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I'm a journalist by trade, but I just look at the radio side and interview people. Anyway. So that was our interview with production designer Patrick Tatopoulos, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Like myself and Maureen just said, we feel we couldn't have gotten a better first production designer or Batman vs Superman guest, but there are more to come, certainly, for Batman vs Superman, but considering we just had Patrick, I think we'll have to look at some more production designer guests,
Oh, definitely.
Hopefully they're as good as Patrick. Yeah. So, time to wrap up today's show, but I'll just remind you first of all that Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice is out now, so if you haven't seen it already, what are you waiting for? Be sure to go and see it. Time to wrap up today's show, so make sure to check out our podcast links, check out our website.everythinggeekpodcast.com/EGP, check out our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/everythinggeekcast. Check us out on Twitter, twitter.com/everythinggeekp. Check us out on Instagram, instagram.com/official-everythinggeekpodcast. Check out our Mixcloud profile, www.mixcloud.com/everythinggeekpodcast. Email us at the below email, everythinggeekpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our companion podcast, Everything Geek Comic Cast, www.facebook.com/everythinggeekcomiccast. Make sure to check out the hosts' YouTube channels. Mine is www.youtube.com/user/Separatist Destroyers. Maureen's is www.youtube.com/user/Lizzie11. Check out Patrick Tatopoulos' credits on IMDb, www.imdb.com/name/nm0851281, and check out Channel 138 we broadcast live from, www.channel138.com. So geeks at everyone.